Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Blood Bowl Formations Dwarf Setups. So we're having a look at all the teams in Blood Bowl 2020, whether they're from the core rulebook, the Teams of Legend PDF, or the expanded NAF teams, and we're looking at how you set up your team at the beginning of a drive, whether you are kicking or receiving. We're going to go through some example setups for this team, specifically looking at some of the positionals, where you want to put them and why, and what kind of formations work well against specific teams. So if you are planning on running a dwarf team or your friends run dwarf teams, hopefully this video will kind of show you some examples of how they can be expected to set up and what works really well for them, and if you're playing against them, what to watch out for. So dwarf teams get quite a rap. Basically, because their linemen start with some really good skills, like block, one of the best skills in the game, if not probably the best skill in the game. And then having tackle and thick skull and armor 10 plus means that when they go down to the ground, they're going to get back up again. And that tackle block combo means that they've just got a tier 2 skill free rolled. And actually tackle is probably one of the better tier 2 skills. Anyway, those are the linemen. But that is a massive impact when you are setting up against a dwarf team, and when you are setting up to play against a dwarf team as well, because those linemen, those blockers, they go great on the line, but they also do a superb job of performing basically an anti-dodge secondary. So if you are playing against, or you are playing a high dodge edge team, expect those linemen to be deployed in the secondary. And the great thing about the dwarf team is they've got blitzers who can perform a very good job of being stuck on the line. So if you need tackle in your secondary, you can just swap out a blitzer for a long beard at any point, and you lose a bit of edge and you lose a bit of movement in the backfield. But if your main role is to stop somebody from 2-die blocking you or dodging past, they're going to do just as good a job. So I played a bunch of dwarf games and had a really good chat with our local player, the Dwarf Lord James, who did win one of our seasons and is a horrible dwarf coach. He runs a superb team. And when it comes to dwarf, there's not really that much variation in formation. With other teams, you want to deploy deep, you want to deploy spaced, because you want to localize the combat. With a dwarf team, whether you are playing offense or defense, you want to create the scrum as quickly as possible. Because if one of your linemen or almost any of your positionals is in combat with almost any other positional in the game, odds are that 7 out of 9 of those combats are going to be in your favour. And the quicker you get in that close combat, the quicker you get in the scrum, the quicker you're going to start being able to win that numbers battle, the attrition battle. Anyway, we'll have a look at our first setup here for dwarves. So notice there's no anchor. Normally we open with the anchor setup. Dwarves are slow. Their fastest players are the runners with movement 6. Everybody else is movement 4, or the blitzers and the slayers are movement 5. So you really have to position where you want to end up, or where you expect your players to go. So the soft center defense is standard 3-4-4. We've seen this before. It's also the chevron, kind of. So if you look at it, you've got the 3 linemen on the line. Now we are accepting the opponent is going to win that line of combat. Now, good thing here is with dwarves, you can commit to the line, and you'll see a couple of defenses next where we've committed more players to winning the line of scrimmage early on. But here we're accepting the fact that they're going to take away that line. Now there's 2 reasons you may run this defense. If you are playing somebody stronger than you, so Black Orcs, Lizardmen, potentially Chaos, that is okay. You know what? Whatever and however you deploy, unless you've got a ton of guard, you're going to win the line of scrimmage anyway. So actually just giving them 3 players instead of 4 or 5 means they're going to get less good blocks against you. And even though you've got thick skull and armor 10, it's a game of probabilities. The more punches you take, the more likely one of them is to take your head off. So you've got 3 linemen on the line. You position them close by, so they're always going to be able to get assists. Now you can put them 1, 2, 3 in a line. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Your opponent is going to get some decent 2-die blocks against you. But this one here is all about this secondary. Now dwarves are slow, so we've got the runner positioned in the centre and at the back. So they've got 6 squares of movement, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they've got basically all of this covered They can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they can basically cover this entire backfield if they need to. But the opponent has to get there. And to do that, what they're going to do is push away here, and then push away here to create a bit of a running lane. 1 square. And if they run through and position here, then they've got the runners to contend to, and then beautifully, and this is the thing I really love about Dwarf Teams, you've got the Slayers. 1, 2, 3, 4, Blitz, 5, go for it for a second, because these guys have Frenzy and Block. So you can always swap Runner with Slayer, but if you put your Runners on the edge, they are likely to get Blitz, and they do create a good target because they don't have Block, and you need your Runners. That sure hands is really important for offense. So, alright, you put the Slayers on the outside, they are likely to get blitzed. But think about it, if your opponent blitzes and doesn't create a good impact on that Slayer, what are they going to do? They're going to have to put a support here. They're going to have to put a support here, which gives you a free block on your turn. We like that. Then they're going to have to blitz in here against the Slayer. Where are they going to put it? The Blitzer's tackle zone, still eligible. They've got a support here, and all they're going to end up with is a very angry Slayer somewhere here. And when your Slayer ends up in one of these 3 squares, whoever was standing here has got a potential to be a Serf. And whether you are playing against, it doesn't matter what team you're playing against. If you are offering up a Serf on turn 1 of a drive, it is going to be a long game for you. So that's why it's great to have those Slayers here. They are a little bit vulnerable. They are going to potentially take a 2-die block if your opponent wants to go that route, but there's nowhere for them to block through, and they've still got thick skull and their armor 9, and they've got block, so they need to land a really good hit. And if that hit sticks and your opponent does then manage to break through, you've got Blitzer, you've got a Longbeard here, you've got a Runner here. Now the Runners here are protected by these players. Okay, the only way to get to the Runner is to break through here and then swing round and blitz that Runner. That's a pretty targeted attack, and if your opponent's going to do that, it means they're going to allocate a lot of resource to that, and that's okay because you've got another Runner this side. The other thing about this offense, and this is why it's so flexible for Dwarves, is if your opponent is a stronger team, they're going to move that line of scrimmage back, and they're probably going to want to start a combat, which means they're going to get 1 2-die blitz. But when they do, they're going to have a bunch of players here, and then you blitz with the Slayer, you stand this guy up, you move this Longbeard in, and you can just start being oppressive with your team. There are no tackle zones to run through, and any way to get through there, they're either going to have to take this middle guy out and sweep through and mark your players, at which point you can just envelop them, because you can, because that's not very far, or they're going to go strong one side. There is no weakness to this offense. The soft center is probably the most vulnerable element here by taking that lineman out and moving down, but you've got so much counterplay, it almost alleviates the fact that you are low on movement. Now the Slayers on the edge, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, does kind of limit it, but as you can see, there is going to be a Slayer able to hit both sides, and your Dwarves, you're going to have 2, 3 rerolls. You're not going to be using the rerolls very often. If you need to use it to go for it, to get an extra Slayer Frenzy Blitz, you can do so, and it's just a really solid defense because there's not really a lot of good action for your opponent, and your turn 2, your first turn, you're going to have a ton of options here. But if you're playing against a team that is more vulnerable than you, so you're playing against a agile team still, just any team that is mid to fast, I'd say, you can go heavy line, you can deploy deeper. So it's very similar to the last setup. We've just jostled a few players along. We put 5 on the line. Now whether you put them 5 in a row or separate like that depends on your opponent. If you put them 5 in a row, there will be potentially an angle for them to blitz the Runner, so be aware of that. Your Runners here are kind of your safeties. Like we said before, they've got 6 movement, they don't have block, but they will be able to go and tag somebody for you to then counter punch with a Slayer. It's a superb defense. Having these guys here in a line seems weird, but it's all about tag there, tag there. If your opponent blitzes there, they're going to go to there, and they're going to be a 2-die into potentially a 1-die block. Your guy isn't necessarily going to get surfed, and it ends up with at least one person in combat with that Slayer. Runner moves up to support, Slayer makes 4-die block with block, and you can also farm out if you need to. So this is all about, actually, I am stronger than you. I have got all combat skills. Everybody here that you can make contact with has got a combat skill and a million armor. So whatever your opponent does, they are going to have to either take you on or avoid you. And let's say they're going to avoid you. They're going to have to deploy 1, 2, 3 players on the line. They're probably going to try and disengage. This guy's got tackle, this guy's got tackle. If they try and dodge away, they are going to lose that dodge reroll, which is massive. And if they do want to come on the blitz, like we said, they're going to have to put support, and blitz in from the side. If they want to go for the surf, they're going to have a good opportunity at it, but it's going to be a couple of risky blocks. And if that is the case, your Slayer is still there. So if you're playing against someone who's got high strength frenzy, Ulfwarreners, or somehow a strength boosted, who would be good with frenzy? Potentially like a Black Orc or something. Not Black Orcs, sorry, big and blockers. Chaos. If you've got some high strength chaos action, drop the lineman down. Your Slayer's going to take a hit and you can run the other one. But then this is for teams that are less strong than you, okay? You've got 5 big guys on the line. They're not big guys, but they are big guys. They're short, but big in presence. You've got 2 runners in safety. You've got a bait here on both sides. If they want to move forward, they're going to be tagging a Slayer. And baiting your opponent into basing a Slayer is the best thing you can do as a Dwarf team. They're going to have to commit or disengage here. If they commit, it's going to take them 7 or 8 players. If they do that, they're going to end up with 3 or 4 in the backfield at most. You've got 11. And you've got 11 resilient players, and 9 of them have got combat skills. So if your opponent does commit heavy, you just engage. You can potentially leave your runners in the backfield, because I guarantee you that this 9 group of death here is going to be better than whatever your opponent farms against you. So, James the Dwarf Lord is our local player and local league champion, and has run 2-3 solid, like from scratch to pro Dwarf teams. He plays horrifyingly well, and I think his Dwarf team is my Skaven team's nemesis. Okay, it's a bad matchup, but James plays so conservatively and so well with Dwarves. So I asked him to talk me through some of the setups that we've got here, some of the ones I've been running on Blood Bowl 2, and he said, okay, try this one out. And I've been really impressed. He says, 3 guys on the line. They're going to get good blocks against you, so you might as well let them. He says, allow the edge case. If you're worried about them breaking through, spread the blitzer out, at least make them block. You've got 2 runners, deep safeties here, basically in line with the sweet spot. So runners can come up and plug any gaps you've got. And you've got a contingent of 2 here. And like I said, if it's faster, you can deploy them a little bit wider and just at least force the blocks. But he said the key here is to have those Slayers 1 square behind the line of scrimmage. So if your opponent does try and clear out that line, they cannot follow up. They are going to have to disengage, and what that does is, because you are dwarves and you've got lower movement, that allows you to save the little movement you have to choose where to counterattack. So if they follow up here, you're going to end up with good and free frenzy blocks with block on your turn. That's fantastic. Your opponent can swing down. If they do that, they're going to end up here, and then you've got potentially unattached Slayers that can come and blitz with a runner to support. If they commit and come down, your Slayers can counteract, and you've got players that can come up here and give them good frenzy blocks. It's a really flexible defense, and I'm kind of glad he's given me a little bit of his secret there, because I'm hoping that as a Skaven player, I can take advantage of this. But even as a Skaven player, what do you do here? You can't win that line of scrimmage. You can play and disengage, but it's going to cost you 5 players. You can definitely blitz and create a hole here, but then you've got Slayer and a bunch of stuff. So in this situation, you need to find a way to push back, allow to tag the Slayer, and tag that line. This Slayer is going to be free. Even if you blitz this one in and tag these 2 players and create a side cage here, runner, Slayer, there's just a ton of opportunity for you to counter-strike with this defense. Well, his secret's out there. Dwarves are great on defense. I've had a load of fun with a couple of different Dwarf teams on Blood Bowl 2, and honestly, Slayers are just fantastic. I cannot wait for Games Workshop to drop a real Slayer team. Not the one Ian's been playing on Fumble, which I am now playing in the finals, just a Slayer team. It's going to be really interesting, but these 2 Slayers are just the most fun I think I've had in Blood Bowl for a while. And sometimes they're going to be kicking to you. So 7-4 offense, we've seen it a lot of different times. You've got 2 runners in the backfield, sure hands. You've got 2 blitzers in the midfield. Those are your support pieces. They can come and support with the cage. Ideally, if the ball lands anywhere here, your runner can collect it and bring it up. Now, we've talked about this before. Secure the ball, then dominate the line. So runner collects, you've got a runner, and you've got 2 blitzers there, potentially, and we'll come to that in a second, to secure the ball. Depending on how your opponent deploys against this line of scrimmage, and I guarantee if you drop 7 dwarves on the line, you are going to end up with some very good blocks. You've got slayers here. Now, where you position your slayers will vary, okay? It depends. The idea here is that the slayers, you want to get the best possible blocks you can. So if anything, you want to deploy them a little bit closer and then blitz them and block them out. So you know what, there's just so many different varieties here, but the whole point is you deploy so strong on the line that you get to farm 4 or 5 really good blocks and then move the remaining players down to form the front of your cage. Runners move up, secure the ball, and you've got basically a cage ready built. All you have to do is get the ball here, and you don't even need to move any players because of the tackle zones. You are protected here. So your opponent is going to have to run a long way around to get to the ball there, even if they need to. The only thing I could say you could run differently about this offense is to have a dwarf here and a dwarf here instead of in the backfield. What that will do is that will give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares of coverage on either side. But it's such a minor change that it doesn't really matter. And what this situation here does do is it gives you 7 on the line to win the line of scrimmage and push it a direction opposite to the ball. You can then drop down a couple of players, secure that ball, and by basically turn 1 of this drive, you've got yourself a dwarf cage and you've probably hurt 1 or 2 players. And if time is not a massive issue with you, you can go 5-4-2 instead. With 5 dwarves on the line, you are probably still going to get some very good blocks. You've got a couple of linemen here that you can move up to support, but what you're doing is basically stopping any blitz shenanigans from happening, because there are no good ways to come through to your line. So if you are seeing out half and you're happy to run down the clock on 3 or 4 turns, this deployment is going to help you. You will still win that line of scrimmage. You don't need to worry about doing anything with the ball. You just don't. If the ball lands here, it doesn't matter. Your opponent's not coming through you. You can blitz this side. You can then move something down to just create a screen around the ball. The 5-4-2 is not the fastest dwarf offense, but that's the point of it. You are running out the clock. You are going to win that line of scrimmage and you're going to be left with a screen of players. Now, you will be able to move 1 runner at least because of their movement. You will be able to move, let's get a little smiley face on the go there. You will be able to move a runner to protect a ball. Get a tackle zone on the ball, maybe even go for the pickup, but you've got a line here of players. And even if your very first thing you do fails, you are still going to be left with that screen of players, which is going to cost your opponent at least 1 turn to go. Now, watch for dodgy leaping teams, because if you do mess up a little bit and leave a bit of an opportunity, there is a cheeky leap opportunity to run through, but best they're going to make that is a 3 or 4 plus. So I don't know, wouldn't worry about it too much. If the ball does land here, you're in pretty safe zone. If the ball lands here, you're in a very safe zone because nobody's running all the way down there to get it, and they're going to have to bust through this screen. So it's weird. We've got a dwarf offense that kind of focuses on defense from the blitz. And do you know why that is? Because you are going to win almost every scrum, okay? Potentially Black Orcs and Orcs in the new edition are the only 2 teams I can see just going toe-to-toe with Dwarves and farming out casualties, okay? It's going to be a real brawl with most teams, and as dwarves develop, they're going to get more access to guard. They don't need it, but they are going to get guard and mighty blow, slayers with mighty blow, blitzers with mighty blow or guard. It's just a massive scrum removal team, and the key is you've got 7 players there that start with block and tackle. You don't need any tier 2 skills on your positionals because your linemen start them. So if you are up against a faster team, all you ever have to do is just deploy your blitzers on the line. They're armor 10 and they've got block. They're just as hardy. No one's dodging. Dwarves are, you know what, I've had a lot of fun playing this. I played I don't know, nearly 20 games I think, just because I was having a really good time. Got a sweet couple of guard. Slayers are so much fun. If I could trade out both my blitzers for slayers, I would every single time. It's just so much fun. In fact, I gave a blitzer frenzy to have a 3rd slayer. Just don't necessarily recommend that, but because I went with slayers and then I just went guard and everything else, it just meant that I could make 17 blocks a turn or something. It was absolutely awesome. So dwarves are way more fun than you think. The setups are way simpler than you think, because honestly this setup here would work on defense just as well. And that's the great thing about dwarves, is you want your players and their players here, and you just want to be blocking them. Anyway guys, thanks very much for watching. Do let me know what you think about dwarf tactics and about dwarf teams, because it's a very hot topic. Anyway, I'm going to disappear. Thank you very much for watching. Happy bank holiday weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.